What up, everybody? Today I am going to install a couple trusses on the AR-60 axles. And I know what a lot of you are saying when you watch this video, or probably heard that I'm doing this video, is it's about damn time. And I agree. I'm sorry. Just trying to keep up. It's not that I don't want to give you guys good instructions. Just doing my best. So I hope you can forgive me, and I hope this helps out all the people in the future that need good instructions. The videos I've done for the other products have really worked out good, so I'm hoping this does the same. So let's start out just some general information about these trusses. The front truss, which is going to look a little something like this. It's got the cutout here for the servo and the servo horn, so it has room to move. Whereas the rear truss is just beefy. It's to hold the axle together. So one of the biggest benefits of these trusses is that it keeps these plastic housings together. These plastic housings are notorious for breaking in half, and it's a real bummer because you got a lot of work to do just to get a new set of axles under there. So these will really strengthen it up. The front, since it's cut out and it's not as beefy as the rear, they give you a Dlux block, so that goes in here, and this is where all the housings break anyway. So with that Dlux block in there, it really strengthens these housings up. And so then you can run with a cheap plastic housing. No need for aluminum. These things are going to slide better, they work better. So there's some bling aluminum housings out there, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. But if you're trying to stay on a budget and you're just trying to keep your car together, these are pretty much the option to go with. So another big thing that these trusses do is that they have multiple holes here. So if you put this on here, these holes are quite a bit higher than the stock axial ones or anything else on the market. The reason this is a great thing is because it changes your suspension geometry. So on a Wraith or a Yeti, the way Axial built their suspension is it doesn't have enough anti-squat. And what that means is it doesn't lift the rear up under acceleration enough. So it kind of does like a little squat. So you'll notice if you're driving your Yeti or your Wraith, when you hit a bump with your rear, the rear axle will want to stuff up, and then it'll cause you to buck in the back a little bit. So when you put these on, and if you put your links up higher, it causes the body and the axle to separate like that. So when you hit a bump, it doesn't compress and it can go. So a lot of people will cover that up with shocks or oils or whatever, which, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it's also very important, obviously, to have proper suspension geometry. So these will really help you out. And then, of course, on the front ones, man, it's just, you put your servo down here, so you got a better weight placement because your servo's down low. And it's the stock one's up here above the pumpkin, so it can cause chassis issues, gets in contact with the chassis. And this is a weird thing to come from me, but when you got your servo on top of your axle, like, that's all I can see. That's all I can see. It just doesn't look scale. I'm not a scale guy, but that is one thing that bothers me on scalers, is when you have the servo on top of the housing. Just crazy. It's crazy. I don't know how the people do it. So anyway, those are the main benefits of the trusses. So right now, let's just install a front one. Put the rear one away. So the front one, I don't have a car that has an AR-60 housing in front of it right now. So I'm just going to install it on this bare housing and my single chub that I have here, and hopefully you get the idea. So in the package you'll have your two plates, Dlux block, and then your hardware. Hardware is going to include these servo mounts. So on the sporty trusses, or the sporty trusses I do, they have a different style of mount. And on the sporty trusses, they're weaker, which doesn't really matter on the sporties because you're not hitting things at 20 miles an hour or whatever. But for these these bigger, beefier servo or the trusses, they'll hold them on, and it raises your servo up also. The sporty ones will let the servo hang a little bit below the axle there, and these U4 trusses, what I call them, they'll bring the servo up so they're flush with the bottom of the tube. And one thing people kind of miss on these a lot is if these don't raise your servo up high enough, just put a spacer underneath the servo. It's really that easy. And then on the sporty ones, if you want to run the sporty one but you want your servo higher, same thing, just space it up. So I've had multiple people complain about hitting their servo, or even on the sporty ones, they'll run it on a go fast car and they'll break their servo off, and then they'll get mad at me, and it's like, these are still somewhat universal parts, you gotta customize them to your needs. So if you need your servo up, space it up. So hopefully that makes sense. So what we're gonna do, the way I like to start these trusses off is you got a cutout on one side, and then you got a solid end on one side. So the solid end is gonna go to the front, cutout's gonna go to the back. And the reason you do the cutout to the back is because your rod ends for your upper links are gonna go in this pocket. They won't fit up in here. So let's just start. You got some 6mm screws, a bunch of 6mm screws, and they're all gonna hold these little spacers to the truss. So what I do, we'll just start out, put a 6mm screw in, and I put them all in like this because it's really fast. I can just spin them on with my hands. So, and you got to be careful because that hole looks like a screw hole, but it's not. It's a go fast hole. Forgot to mention these too. These trusses will make your car go probably 3 to 4 miles an hour faster just because they have these trusses on them. Hard to believe, huh? Hard to believe, but true. So I'm just going to set these up in the highest hole. You may or may not want them there. They'll give more, the higher up, the more clearance they'll give the servo with the upper links. But like I said, with your suspension geometry, it'll change your suspension geometry. So not all the time do you want those links up high. It'll mess with you. But if you don't know, you probably don't know. So it probably doesn't matter. So I got all these spacers in. So you can have them on each end, one here close to the middle, and 2 in the middle. I'm not doing these 3 because this Dlux block's going to go in right there. So once I got those attached, and that's what these 10mm screws are going to be for, is they're going to go through these spacers into the housing. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You could put the other plate on now, which is fine. I'll probably do it that way. Hopefully I don't mess this video up because I don't really mess with this type of car. Like, I'm more of a comp crawler guy, than most you know. So I've probably only installed probably 3 or 4 of these ever. So we'll see how good I can do. So don't tighten anything up. Leave it loose because you're going to need to make sure it's going to go down on the housing. You don't want to stress anything out. So this is just basically to loosely put everything together. Okay, so we're going to have something like that. So then also if you've got this diff on this, well, I won't call it passenger side because you got those weirdos in Australia and other European countries that drive on the wrong side of the road, but for us this would be a passenger side. So if you're running a passenger side, you do that. You can also take these plates and you can flip them around, this front to back, back to front, and you can move it over here. So they go on both sides. But obviously for this one, I'm going to go ahead and put this here. So then the first thing I'm going to do is you got a long, I believe this is a 25mm screw. It's going to go through the housing right here. Put her through. And that's not going to be in that. This is going to be a servo mount. So you got the 2 holes on the servo mount, 1 hole on the bottom. So this is going to be for this. I say just put everything on loosely. And then we can take our 10 mil long screws. And that's why you don't want anything tight in here, because now I can take all these holes and I can straighten them out. If you tighten them up, you're going to have a hard time getting in there. So get your 10 mil screw. Tighten that up. And make sure when you get to this hole, obviously that's got to be straight. Make sure that chub's all the way pushed on. So I just look down here and I make sure my holes are lined up. So obviously you don't want your screw going into the chub or missing the hole in the plastic or whatever. So that. When we put the Dlux block in, Dlux block's got a little angle cut into it, and that angle's to clear the pumpkin in there. Put that in. Make sure that's loose, because I got to come back in here with these 6 mil screws. None of these holes are tapped, letting the plastic or letting the screws do the tapping. Makes for a better thread that way. See, you got to kind of pinch this a little bit to get that Dlux to come up. There we go. It was stuck in there for some reason. Still kind of is. I might have to pry it back up while I put screws in it. See? Yeah, it's a little bit off. So there we go. That should do it. Okay, and now you can tighten up all these ones on the housing, and then I think these ones are already good. Those ones are good. And this, I was thinking, why do I have an extra screw? I screwed up my screw count on camera. That's horrible, but obviously this will go here. I don't have the other chub in. I'm pretty sure you guys can figure that one out. And this is going to go here. But the thing is you're going to put. So you're going to have 2 rod ends, right? Of course, I've got JADOs just sitting right here. So JADO's a bad example, because I've got these JADOs come in different widths, and I've got these weird width ones that are a little bit wider than everything else in the whole world. But typically you're going to take a Revo ball and you're going to put it on here. What I do is I put them on like that and I push them down. See, it's not going to fit because these JADO balls are too wide. But so you're going to go rod end, spacer, rod end, Revo ball. Don't do like a Traxxas 3 mil ball or a shock ball or a JADO ball, because they're all different widths. So if you get slop in here, it's probably because you have a shock rod ball. If it doesn't fit, it's because you probably have JADO rod balls. So all Revo. You want all Revo balls, and then it'll fit perfect. So that's how that will go. But for you guys, I'm just putting this together. So something like so. That nut will go on there, but the whole reason I just did that is so now I can tighten. I am missing a screw. So now I can tighten all of these. And when you tighten these, if you don't have this, screw in, then when you tighten these spacers are going to turn. So make sure you got all those in. This is my servo one. Tighten up the servo on the back there. Tight, tight, tight. Okay. The last thing you got to do is we got to put this other servo post on. It's going to go here in the Dlux. So I'll just take the set screw, put it in a little ways, thread her on. So that's that. And then your servo will do, I'll go this way, sit on just like that. Well, you gotta remember to tighten that one too. If you have a weird servo or that one gets in the way, do a countersunk flathead screw right there. So that's the truss. That's how it'll look. So a couple things on this front truss is sometimes you can run like Vanquish's scale, knuckles and hubs and whatnot, and there's just, depending on where you're steering and your tie rods and your rod ends can go, sometimes they can hit these screws. Like it's very common to hit this screw and have that mess you up on both sides, obviously. So if that's the case, here's a couple tricks that might help you out. You can take this screw out, and then you can countersink these trusses, and you can put a flathead screw in there. Sounds very trivial, but it's going to actually gain you quite a bit of steering angle. So you take those out, and if you don't know how to countersink, totally understandable. I didn't know how to do it for a long time either, but you don't even have to have a countersink bit. It's preferred to have one, like they work good. You can also just take a standard drill bit. If you have a standard drill bit, they're 82-degree points, and these flathead screws, that's also an 82-degree point. So that the tip of a standard drill bit is the same angle as the tip of a flathead screw. So if you take this screw out, you can take a drill bit, like a 1/4-inch drill bit will work just great. Take a 1/4-inch drill bit and just drill a little bit, test fit your screw to see if it's countersunk yet. Drill a little more, test fit, countersink, and then you can have flathead screws right there. That'll save you a lot of space. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes it's still too wide right here. So I'm not going to do it on this one. I'll just give you guys the idea, and you kind of have to be a little bit handy to deal with this anyway. But if you're hitting at these points still, it's too wide. So take this spacer out, trim it down a little bit with your Dremel so you can pinch this. So you can go as narrow as the head as this screw. So shave that as much as you want. Make sure you give yourselves some threads still. You don't want to run out of threads. So pinch that down. This side's going to be a tiny bit trickier, but what I do is you take this block out, do the same thing as this side, and then as soon as this is pinched in, put this block on top right here and kind of see where you got to narrow this block up. You might take a pen or something and just draw while the block's on here. Just scribe the bottom of it, and then you can take it to like a belt sander, your Dremel, whatever, and you can taper this Delrin block in. So if you taper this in, taper these ends in, I've seen everybody getting 70-degree steering with these trusses, 70-degree steering with the shafts that I provide. So totally possible to get 70-degree steering. That's one of the hardest things people to figure out is how to get steering out of these, and then also lowering and raising the truss and whatnot. All totally doable with this truss. Not a problem. Shouldn't be a problem. So there's the front truss. I hope that made sense. Let us do the rear truss. This one's actually going to go on a Yeti I just got. So same thing, with the front, right? I'll just go over it again. So obviously you're not moving your servo. This is a rear axle. Moving your servo is a big benefit, but also raising your suspension links will raise your anti-squat. Raising your anti-squat can be a great thing when you go over a bump. When you hit that bump on acceleration, when you have more anti-squat, the body and the axle will want to separate more. So you can hit a bump, and it typically the axle will want to bump into the shocks or the chassis, but when you've got a lot of anti-squat, you could make it so bad that you could just raise up like that and pop a wheelie kind of over it. But if you don't have enough anti-squat, what will happen is you'll go over this bump, and then you don't have enough anti-squat, and so it just bangs the chassis in there, and you're going to have to band-aid that with shocks and springs and things that just, there's certain ways to tune suspensions. You want your shocks to do a shock job. You want your suspension to do a suspension job. There's it's hard to explain, but there's different reasons that different things need to have what they have. So anyway, long story short, raising your suspension links up will give you more anti-squat, which will make your body want to separate from your axle more. So on the Yeti and the Wraith, it's a big deal because you're not bottoming out all the time. You don't have to band-aid with stiffer springs, with stiffer shock oil. Hopefully that makes sense. Obviously the other major advantage, and the biggest reason I'm putting this on here, is to save this plastic housing. These plastic housings just love to fail, love to crack in half. Usually takes a shaft with it. It's just super damaging. And you got to spend your time repairing the car instead of driving the car. Nobody wants to do that. So these trusses make it happen for plastic housings, and then you have the plastic housing that slides better on the rocks. It's lighter. It's a good deal. If you want to go aluminum, go ahead. You're not going to break those probably either, but this is a super killer setup with a plastic axle. Okay, so on the front, you got a cutout piece, you got a solid piece. Cutout piece is going to go to the center of the car, and then the non-cutout piece is going to go to the back of the car. And the reason for that is your rod ends are going to sit in this pocket. That's what those are made for. So like the front, we're going to start out, you got a bunch of 6mm screws. So I'm going to just take these 6mm screws and then your spacers, and I'm just going to finger tight put them on. I do it this way because you can put these spacers on really quick rather than with a screwdriver. You can just spin them on, hold the screw. It takes a little while longer if you actually hold the driver and try to drive the screw in. Okay, first side done, finger tight. Continue on with the other side. Obviously match your pumpkin up. Oh, and like I was saying on the front, so obviously I'm doing the cutout on this side because that's the center of the car. But if you happen to run this pumpkin on this side, we would have assembled it like this. So still the solid side to the back, the cutouts to the front, but you just got to turn your pieces around. So they work on either side. Alright, and then once you got all the 6mm screws in, you got all the spacers in, I didn't mention this, but you don't want to put a spacer right here because that's where it's going to go on the housing right there. Put all of them in but that one, and then take your 25mm long screw. So you can see you only got a couple 10mm screws left, and that's 35. This 35 is going to be for your upper links. So we're going to attach it to the housing with this 25mm screw. And then if you have the existing screws on, make sure you take the existing screws out. And then if you keep all these truss spacers loose, like that one's not. You can turn them. You can make these spacers go where you need to. So put the 25mm screw through. So everything's still just going finger tight. Okay, now that you got everything's pretty much started, everything's going in, except for you do not have this one started yet. And this one, the reason this one's important to get started so you can get these, just get the spacers straight. So now that everything's started, everything's in, let's tighten all the 6mm screws again. Okay, now all you have left is the 10mm screws that hold it to the lockouts and hold it to the axle housing. These will tighten up pretty good. You obviously can't get too crazy, it's just plastic. Now, ready to go. It's ready to install on the car. But on these, you need Revo balls. I went over this with the front truss, but I'll just do it real quick with the rear. So you're going to take your Revo ends, which are probably going to be the upper links that you're running. So you're going to have a Revo on the outside of this spacer. And then you're going to have a Revo on the inside of this spacer. And something I actually like to do is you can loosen this back up. It's kind of hard to do with sloppy rod ends just being on there without links. But what I like to do is I like to make that spacer move a little bit, and then you get your rod balls on, and then you put them all in, so like that. So it's going to go Revo end, spacer, Revo end, Revo ball, spacer, and then capture it all with a nut. So like I explained on the other one, if you use anything but Revo balls, this could either be sloppy in here or this could be too tight. So a Jado ball is too big. The Traxxas 3mm rod ends or the Traxxas shock rod end balls, they're all too short, so they'd be sloppy. So you have to use Revo balls. So it should be easy enough for everybody to figure out. But that's it. You're ready to go. Ready to take this thing off jumps. See if you can break that housing now. And you should notice a significant difference in the suspension geometry also if you raised them up quite a bit. So that's it. Hopefully you guys can put these trusses together real easily now, and you're good to go. Thanks for watching.